In May 2014, an elderly man's deceased body was found at a home in Putnam County, Georgia. His wife's remains were found a week later floating in the lake surrounding the home, Lake Oconee. The couple's house sat in a cul-de-sac amid an enclave of lake houses in the 12,000-acre gated Reynolds Plantation Great Waters community known for its golf course. The area is considered an affluent area with a very low, if non-existent, crime rate. The elderly couple were 88-year-old Russell Joseph Dermond and 87-year-old Shirley Bell Wilcox Dermond. Mr. Dermond was a native of Hackensack, New Jersey, and Mrs. Dermond was a native of Maywood, New Jersey. Russell Joseph Dermond served for 3 years in the Naval Air Corps during World War II. In September 1951, Russell Dermond was a senior at Fairleigh Dickinson College, where he was elected to Phi Zeta Kappa. He met Miss Shirley Bell Wilcox at Bogota High School. Miss Wilcox was a graduate of Bogota High School, Bernard College, and Catherine Gibbs School in New York. She was employed as a secretary with Melville Shoe Corporation. They both got engaged to be married at a party at Miss Shirley Wilcox's home on Saturday, September 8, 1951, and a winter wedding was planned. At 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, the 16th of December, 1951, at the First Presbyterian Church of Hackensack, New Jersey, Miss Shirley Bell Wilcox became the bride of Russell Joseph Dermond. Russell and Shirley Dermond had 4 children together, 3 sons and 1 daughter, and had 9 grandchildren. Russell Dermond, after he served in the Navy, went to work for General Time Corp., a clockmaking company, where he was a director and then later retired to own and operate several Hardee's restaurants in the Atlanta area in the late 1980s. The Dermonds, who'd made money in the restaurant business, bought an 85-acre property in 1994 on Lake Oconee and built their $600,000, 3,255 square foot house in 1999 to live out their retirement years at the Great Waters Reynolds Plantation known for its golf course community. They lived at 147 Carolyn Drive. A lake house sat in a tree-shrouded cul-de-sac. The Dermonds had missed a Kentucky Derby viewing party on the afternoon of Saturday, the 3rd of May, 2014, a gathering they had RSVP'd their intention to attend. At 10 a.m. on Tuesday, May 6, 2014, neighbors who were friends of the Dermond family visited the lake house and noticed the doors were unlocked. They went inside and made a gruesome discovery. They had found the headless body of Russell Dermond in the garage of the home. Their neighbor Peggy Wynn frantically dialed 911.
Oh. Putnam County 911.
Yes, I have an emergency.
Okay.
I think I have somebody dead.
Okay, what's the address, ma'am?
Huel, what's the address here?
I don't know.
We're in Great Waters.
Is it 147 Carolyn Drive?
Yes, 147 Carolyn Drive.
Okay, and who is it?
The Dermonds.
Okay, and you're a neighbor or something?
Yes, I just came to check on them. They've been missing for about 4 days.
Are they in the house?
Yes.
What's your name, ma'am?
I'm Peggy Wynn.
Okay.
Oh, my God. Oh.
Okay. They're both dead, Miss Wynn?
Did you find both of them? No.
Okay.
No, it's just one.
Okay.
I don't know where the other one is.
Okay. All right, I'll get you a deputy in the ambulance over there just in case, okay?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
On Tuesday, May 6, 2014, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills said in a statement that the Putnam County authorities are virtually certain the body which was found was 88-year-old Russell Dermond and that he was a homicide victim. Shirley Dermond was not at the home when Russell was found, and investigators believed she may have been abducted. Sheriff Howard Sills said in a statement that the crimes happened between Friday, May 2nd and Sunday, May 4th, 2014.
Inside this gated community is what's being described as a murder mystery. A husband dead and a wife presumably missing. It's the first homicide in Putnam County in nearly 10 years, and it's leaving residents of this community very shocked.
It's unsettling.
Things like that just don't happen here.
Tuesday morning, 88-year-old Russell Dermond was found dead by friends inside his $1 million home in the Great Waters community on Lake Oconee. His wife, 87-year-old Shirley Dermond, not inside.
Could she be some sort of accomplice? I guess she could be. But her purse is there, personal belongings are there, and she's not there, and he's dead.
Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills assumes she's been abducted.
The condition of the body is not indicative of an 87-year-old, moving a body of that weight and things like that.
Sills doesn't know how Dermond was killed, but he believes the crimes happened sometime over the weekend. Media is being kept out of this exclusive gated community that posts guards around the clock. Sheriff Sills suggests the alleged killer may have known the Dermonds, who, according to tax records, have lived here since 1994. Investigators revealed during their search there weren't signs of a struggle or forced entry in the home, which is on the lake and heavily wooded.
There are no neighbors on one side. The other neighbor is out of the country. Obviously, this is a very nice neighborhood, one of the nicest neighborhoods in our county.
But that's not stopping Carrie Wiles from taking extra precautions now.
Yeah, I have to admit, I put down the blinds and made sure all the doors were locked and the garage door was down and everything last night.
Sheriff Sills is now focusing the investigation to finding Shirley Dermond. I spoke with the Dermond son, Brad, earlier today, who tells me the family is driving in from around the southeast to speak with the sheriff's office today and find out more about this investigation. Reporting in Putnam County, Kristen Drummond, WGXA.
In a press conference on May 8, 2014, 2 days after the discovery of Russell's body, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills revealed more details of the crime scene, claiming there was no signs of forced entry into the property. Russell's body had been moved and a weapon was not located. The couple's cell phones and credit cards and Shirley Dermond's purse, her keys, and other valuables were found in the home. Their cars were still at their house. In fall 2012, the Dermonds reported that someone unknown to them rang up $2,000 plus in online purchases on their American Express account, 5 charges at Macy's and 2 at Amazon.com. Cadaver dogs had searched the woods surrounding the home. Sheriff Sills said there is no indication the couple's relatives were involved and that the crime was not a random attack, and he didn't believe it was the work of a serial killer. He said that Shirley was not considered a suspect in her husband's murder.
There haven't been many new developments today, but I will finally confirm for all of you that Mr. Dermond's head was decapitated, and we do not know the whereabouts of his head. The autopsy is still going on right now at the State Crime Lab in Atlanta. We are still interviewing neighbors and friends and still pursuing the acquisition of financial records and those types of things, and we still do not know the whereabouts of Shirley Dermond. We have had false reports and rumors to the extent that we found Miss Dermond's body. We have not. And I stress to everyone, as I have since the very first day of this, we need to assume, or at least pray, that Miss Dermond is still alive, and we desperately need to know her whereabouts. And obviously, we need to find if possible, the remains of Mr. Dermond that we don't have in our possession.
Anything else found in the garage? Any kind of a weapon?
No.
Kind of knife?
No.
Hatchet?
No. No.
Are there any blood stains in the garage?
Well,
Is that the murder scene?
I don't know that that's the murder scene, but there's obviously blood.
Was the coroner able to give you a better sense of exactly what time this crime happened, or even down to a day?
No, we know that this happened sometime between. I know that this happened from other sources, mail deliveries, that it happened sometime Friday or Saturday or maybe early Sunday morning.
Have you looked at all this surveillance footage from the gated entrance? Is that?
We are trying to locate all surveillance footage anywhere in that area of this county. My detectives are out right now gathering video footage from stores even that we had no idea he might have gone to or might not have gone to.
Where was the body moved from?
I have no idea. I mean, I can tell you it was moved a couple of feet in the garage.
How heavy a man was he?
I would say, looking at it, about 150, 170 pounds.
Sheriff, were you able to determine if the decapitation happened, died from the decapitation, or he was murdered first and then that?
I've not confirmed that yet. I would suspect it was postmortem. I would suspect that. I do not know that.
Can you talk to us about what your investigators have been doing in the surrounding community, in the houses nearby, and then on the lake as well, in terms of what you were looking for?
Within a matter of 2 hours upon receiving this call, my patrol boats were in the water and we drug the vicinity of this home. Obviously, we are not in a position it's humanly impossible to drag Lake Oconee, but we did that within a couple of hours. Yesterday, the Department of Natural Resources came with the most advanced sonar equipment they have, what we call sideman sonar, that depicts the bottom of the lake. Once again, we worked the area immediately adjacent to the home, I don't mind telling you, we found a Christmas tree and a lawn chair on the bottom of the lake. Within an hour of responding to this call, our cadaver dogs had searched the immediate vicinity, wooded area around the home. Not the entire green space there, but the entire area immediately adjacent to that. We've done that. We continue going from door to door, people on that street and the adjacent streets and things like that, and talking to people who were there. This is no different, although this is a tremendous amount of media present, this is no different than we do any homicide investigation. You try to find out the whereabouts of people and who they had contact with, and we're doing that, and we conduct it the same way I always have. When we have a violent crime and something I'm in command of, we throw all of our resources at it, and all of my detectives as well as some other deputies, and we're being assisted by the FBI and the Jones County Sheriff's Office, the Morgan County Sheriff's Office, and sheriffs throughout the state have offered to send us as many deputies as I want, but we don't have a point to look as far as the whereabouts of Mrs. Dermond. There's no, we looked in, like I said, we looked in the woods adjacent to the house. We looked in the lake. But as her pocketbook and things like that are there, the cell phone is there, the car is there, we don't have anything to track other than the image that we've given you to put out there for the public to see.
And you're still considering her a victim and not a suspect?
Let me tell you, the only person that's not a suspect, Sheriff Seals, because I know where I was, okay? And, but given the totality of the circumstances of her age, the fact that he was decapitated, I certainly don't consider her a suspect, but can I absolutely say for a certainty that no, I can't, but there's certainly nothing to indicate that and everything to indicate that she is, has been abducted in some manner.
What makes you think this is a random incident?
I don't think it's a random incident.
So what do you say to the community?
I think for whatever reason, these people were singled out for this. They live in the most exclusive neighborhood, or one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in this county. It's not out on a major thoroughfare like Highway 441 or something like that, where some, traveling serial killer might be just going through. They're on a cul-de-sac in a gated, multi-million-dollar resort community that we have no crime in. We virtually have no crime in that subdivision. I'm not going to tell you we work minor traffic accidents there. We we respond to false burglar alarms. I'm sure we've had a golf club stolen or something like that, but I don't ever recall in the 18 years I've been sheriff of us even having a burglary there. So it's not the type of neighborhood for random crime. And it damn sure isn't the circumstances of a decapitated man, and an 88-year-old man in his home, being a random crime.
Do you think he was killed in the garage?
I don't know that.
Are there any leads in people who may have had malicious intent against this couple?
None that we've been able to determine.
Any motives?
None that we can
What
determine.
information has the family provided?
The children are here. They're adult children, and they've been extremely cooperative. But they lived in different states, and while they did have contact with their parents, they had not had contact with their parents in a couple of days.
Sure, can you say, have they indicated that there were any past troubles? Anybody who would have an issue, just even old business dealings? Have they shed any light on who would have a...
Mr. Dermond had been retired basically for about 2 decades, and they've lived here since 1994. And so, no. The answer to that's no.
Any health issues?
It's not easy getting there by the lake either. I mean, aren't they like a real thin coat?
Well, you could get there by the lake, certainly.
I mean, would you be visible? I mean, it's sort of like people, I mean, aren't all the homes right on the lake?
Oh, sure. I mean, but you've got to understand, on our lakes here, people are fishing at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not unusual to see fishermen casting lures up against docks anywhere on Lake Oconee or Lake Sinclair in Putnam County. That's not unusual.
Any health issues with the couple? Anything that you knew about?
Yeah, but I mean, nothing. I mean, there are health issues that I'm aware of through the family, and medications and things like that are no different than the average person their age.
Based on your experience and your knowledge of this area, are you inclined to believe that whoever did this came from access their home through the lake and not through the front gate, or is there anything that leads you one way or another?
No, there's nothing to tell us that it came from the water or from the ground. There's no, what I'm saying, we have no, these are paved streets. We have a dock with an immaculate dock with it's not any broken boards on it or anything. It's not there. I can't tell. Could it come to water? Yes. Could it come from the street? Yes. Could it come from outer space? Yes. I don't. It's totally open.
Sheriff,
yeah.
This happened Friday night, Saturday morning, potential abduction of Mr. Dermond. Does the fact that there is no apparent ransom note, no communication, is that more and more disturbing as the hours go on?
Certainly it is. I mean, you've got such unusual circumstances here. The totality of these circumstances are very unusual. I mean, if it's an abduction, you would expect some sort of extortion demand. If it was an assassination, you would think both of the people would be there, both bodies would be there. And then you have a totally nothing in their background that indicates anything like this, and then the area where it happened is not indicative of any kind of homicide, much less there's no domestic history. They've been married 68 years.
How frustrating is this for you, as an investigator, trying to get to the bottom of having to work 2 very different crimes with such an innocent couple?
Well, I can tell you that I worked many, many homicides in my career, and this quite candidly is the most frustrating one that I've ever worked so far.
Why is that?
Once again, the totality of the circumstances that I've explained to you, the very unusual factors that keep popping up, and no apparent enemies or things like that, or nothing that made them particularly vulnerable, or an area that was not vulnerable, all of that together.
You tell people to lock their doors now?
I tell people to lock their doors all the time. I'm the sheriff of this county. I'm the most heavily armed individual probably in it. I never get out of my vehicle that I don't lock my door, and I lock my own doors at night. And so I think everybody should do that. We live in a community that, compared to most of the communities you're from, has no crime. But that doesn't mean that everyone should be cautious at all times.
Residents are panicked, getting calls from people?
No, I wouldn't call it panic. What my biggest problem, if you want the truth about it, is false rumors that are being spread about. And people are not panicked. This is a community that's capable, at least initially, protecting itself, I think, and I don't think we've got any panic. But this is still a small town, and then that's an isolated community, and this hasn't happened before. So I don't care if it's Buckhead, you know, or Bangladesh. When you have a crime like this in the neighborhood, people are going to be upset.
Is there anything more specific that you could ask for from the public in terms of the type of information you're looking for? A time?
Anybody that has had recent contact, and I say recent contact, I'm talking about in the last week with the Dermonds, or certainly anybody who has seen Mrs. Dermond. That's what we're looking for, or anybody who knows anybody or about anything about these people, why these people, they would be, you know, targeted if they were targeted in this manner.
Can you confirm the FBI is investigating with you right now? Is it
Sure.
because it's going across state lines?
I asked the FBI in early because of the potential abduction, and they've assisted me. I mean, we're talking, I mean, before I walked in here, I was talking to an agent, and the resident agent from Macon actually worked with me side by side for 13 hours yesterday.
What exactly are they doing in the investigation?
Well, they're handling some technical things and running down some leads for us that they can do faster.
What are the chances that she is still alive at this point?
Well, I certainly hope that she's still alive, but I'm not overly optimistic simply because of her husband.
What was the most recent phone calls or any information from that?
The most recent time we know somebody, excuse me, the most recent time we can confirm, and I've confirmed this myself by looking at it, was Thursday afternoon, okay? But because of mail deliveries and things like that, we know that it goes a little bit beyond that.
You said there was no sign of forced entry, nothing ransacked in the home. Was there any sign of fingerprints, any physical evidence to show that someone...
I'm not going to elaborate on anything of that nature.
Any credit cards or any
No,
financial statements?
not at this time. Not that we're aware of.
Is it safe, fair to say y'all really still don't have a lead? I mean, it's just because of the nature of the
Yes. Oh, yes.
Have there been any calls that seemed like a promising lead, and you go out and you think it's going to be something, and
We're getting,
there hasn't been that much?
I want people to call, but we've had calls like we saw a boat at 2 o'clock in the morning on the lake. Well, you can see a boat anytime at 2 o'clock in the morning on the lake. That's not, I don't mean to, it's not 285, my God, but it's, but boats are on our lakes late at night. People fish late at night. But we're following up on those when we get a call. We're questioning the people there. But if I had a good solid lead, guess what? I wouldn't be standing here talking to y'all.
They have security there 24 hours out at that game, you know?
Yes.
So is it possible that somebody, or probable that somebody came via boat?
I don't think it's any more probable that they came by boat than they came by car.
And the surveillance video was working, and you have looked through it?
We are trying to determine that now. Okay.
So we don't know if the security
We don't
was
know.
working?
But we don't know yet.
So do you think they possibly knew your killers, his killer?
It is indicative of that. But if I knock on your door and you come to the door and I stick my pistol in your face and I grab you, there may not be a struggle then, okay? But initially one would think, as there's no forced entry or something like that, that they probably knew. But I can't absolutely, say that for certain.
They have to call in security though, right?
Pardon me?
They have to call security to be able to have access, right?
That's the way it's supposed to work.
Is there any other signs of physical trauma on the body, struggles, stabbings?
I'm not going to elaborate on that any further either.
Have they been having any work done in the house at all?
I mean, there are lawn maintenance people that work at all these homes are kept up immaculately. Almost all of the people that live in these neighborhoods have landscapers and garden people that come there, monthly or weekly and do things. So that type of stuff does go on. We obviously have identified those people, and to my knowledge, I'm not absolutely sure. I think we've already interviewed all of those people.
Any contractors, anybody coming to the neighborhood looking for work or knocking on doors, anything like that?
There shouldn't be.
Sheriff,
I'm sorry to ask you to elaborate about the absolutely most gruesome element of this, but can you just clarify, you did say that he was decapitated. Was his head with his body?
No, we do not have a head.
You said the children helped you rule out the possibility of torture. Is that still the case?
No, I didn't say that. I said the children have been completely cooperative with us and in every way. And I can't tell you whether, I have no way of knowing at this point in time whether he was tortured or anybody was tortured. You know, I don't think, as I said earlier, I don't think, I mean, I'm fairly confident that his head wasn't severed while he was alive.
Did they own a boat?
No.
When do you expect the preliminary report?
I've had portions of it already. And I've told you all I'm going to tell you.
Thank you very
You
much.
said they did or didn't own a boat?
They did not own a boat anymore. They did own a boat at one time, but they sold it a couple of years ago.
Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills believed 87-year-old Shirley Dermond had been kidnapped and wanted anyone with information on her whereabouts to call the Putnam County Sheriff's Office.
Thanks for watching WGXA News at 11. I'm Raymond Tubb. Well, first up tonight, the Putnam County Sheriff's Office is trying to find a missing woman whose husband was found murdered this morning. They're trying to locate 87-year-old Shirley Dermond. They believe that she might be the victim of a kidnapping. Investigators were called to the Great Waters community on Lake Oconee in Putnam County this morning. They were called after friends went in to check on the Dermonds and found 88-year-old Russell Dermond dead. Shirley Dermond is 5 feet 2 inches tall and 148 pounds with gray hair and blue eyes. They believe that she was possibly abducted. They think that the crime happened between Friday and Sunday. If you've got any information, you can call the Putnam County Sheriff's Office at 706-485-8557.
Sheriff Howard Sills said there was no blood spatter pattern found at the crime scene and claimed that the severing of Russell's head was not likely the cause of his death. Sills wanted the doctor to tell him if the death occurred at the home and said there was no evidence of a bullet hole in the wall or anything. Investigators suspected Russell Dermond had been tortured due to the condition of one of his fingers, but relatives helped rule that theory out and said the deformity was the result of an old injury. Russell, who would have turned 89 in June 2014, was an active person and was a walker. Russell Dermond was last seen at the Publix pharmacy not far from his house on May 1st, and someone reported seeing him walking on a neighborhood golf course on May 2nd, 2014. On Tuesday, the 29th of August 2000, a son of the Dermonds, 47-year-old Mark Christian Dermond, who lived in Dunwoody, Georgia, was murdered when he was shot 3 times in the neck and torso while he was sitting in his car when he was buying crack cocaine in downtown Atlanta on his 47th birthday. A friend of his who was with him, Grady Harris Jr., 51, was shot in the leg and later survived the shooting, which occurred at 10:15 p.m. on 749 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. The shooter, 28-year-old Shatik Hinnett, was arrested the next day on a charge of murder. Atlanta police officer John Quigley said a witness identified Hinnett as the shooter. On Friday, May 9, 2014, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills said Russell Dermond's autopsy yielded little to help deputies track down a culprit. Sheriff Howard Sills said the official cause of Russell Dermond's death was craniocerebral trauma. Because Russell's head was not found, it wasn't known whether he was shot, stabbed, or suffered some other blow. On May 10, 2014, Pastor David Key spoke to the media about the couple who were both members of the Lake Oconee Community Church.
Investigators continue to search for clues at the home of Russell and Shirley Dermond, a home located behind these gates at Great Waters Reynolds Plantation. Deputies say someone murdered then beheaded 88-year-old Russell Dermond. His head is still missing. The killer also kidnapped his wife, 87-year-old Shirley Dermond. She remains missing. The Dermond family pastor says they moved out here to Putnam County to avoid this type of crime.
You move out here to avoid things that happen to the Dermonds. So the combination of the general and the specific, it is fairly shocking.
Pastor David Key just spoke with the couple's family Friday morning. He says they're coping the best they can and are hoping for their mother's safe return.
The hope is we will continue to hold out hope. These, the Dermonds and their children exhibited as well are very grounded individuals, very strong personalities as far as just a deep confidence. They're not overwhelming people by any means. They just have deep confidence, and so they're going to continue to have that hope as long as they can.
A week after Shirley Dermond was initially considered missing, the State Department of Natural Resources officials enlisted the use of an ROV sonar to help scour surrounding waterways to see what's underwater. The U.S. Marshals and the FBI got involved to help. There was no sign of activity on their account and no ransom note. There was no apparent motive for the killing. The FBI became involved to help find 87-year-old Shirley Dermond and comb through phone records and financial records. The FBI had also checked for any sign of organized crime because of how Russell's body was found.
Well, investigators in Putnam County are pulling out new tools in their search for evidence more than a week after the murder of an 88-year-old man and the disappearance of his 87-year-old wife. WGXA's Shotty Tager shows you that officials are getting high-tech with their search of the waterways surrounding the couple's Lake Oconee home.
There's a new tool in the hunt for 87-year-old Shirley Dermond. A week after Dermond's husband Russell was found decapitated in the couple's home on Lake Oconee, state officials are enlisting the use of an ROV, a remote operating vehicle used to scour surrounding waterways.
This little robot right here has a forward-looking sonar built into it, but it also has a full-color camera and halogen lights to where we are able to see what's underwater versus getting a visual audio representation of it.
88-year-old Russell Dermond's body was found May 6th. His head and his wife are missing. The Putnam County Sheriff's Office calling it a likely murder and abduction. State officials say they've been searching the waters around the home for a week, but have now brought in the ROV, leaving no stone unturned.
It actually gives us a map of what is underwater to where we can see it. So in my opinion, yes, it is the best way we can search what's under the water.
Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills says investigators are still working inside the Dermonds' home as they desperately search for any clues. Sills says his office is conducting interviews, gathering tips, and working to obtain the Dermonds' financial records. The state's sonar team says they haven't uncovered any evidence yet, but will keep searching during daylight hours until Sills calls them off. Shanti Tager, WGXA.
Sonar team says that its ROV is a very useful tool. They say that only 5 drowning victims have yet to be recovered since 2009, and the state averages 60 drownings a year. If you have any information about the death of Russell Dermond or the disappearance of Shirley Dermond, you're asked to call the Putnam County Sheriff's Office.
On May 15, 2014, Keith Dermond, the couple's 55-year-old son said in an interview that he and his 2 surviving siblings had resigned themselves to the idea that their mother wouldn't be found alive. Keith Dermond said his parents were very safety conscious and religiously armed their home security system. Keith Dermond didn't believe someone targeted his parents for the brutal crime. He believed it was random and maybe the work of a cult. Shirley Dermond, who liked to play bridge and was considered a good player, would go to the Eatonton's Plaza Arts Center on North Madison Avenue twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where the Bridge Club met. A person pointed out on Thursday, May 15th, at the Bridge Club as the day was ending, that the last score sheet bearing Shirley Dermond's name was a tally from Thursday, May 1st. She often won the weekly games, but she and her partner had come in 7th that day. On Friday, May 16, 2014, the body of 87-year-old Shirley Dermond was found by 2 fishermen near the Long Shoals boat ramp on the Greene County line in Lake Oconee, 5 miles from her home. Her body was hung up in the tree line. Shirley was weighed down by a pair of 30-pound concrete blocks, her corpse bloated and surfaced face down in 46 feet of water. An autopsy occurred the next day and revealed she died of blunt force trauma to her head.
The double murder mystery in Putnam County continues today. Investigators releasing new details about the woman found in Lake Oconee yesterday, believed to be Shirley Dermond. Noelle Saunders has more on that story and the autopsy results.
After much speculation about the body found Friday by 2 fishermen in Lake Oconee, dental records now confirm the remains are 87-year-old Shirley Dermond. Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills says an autopsy done Saturday at the GBI Crime Lab reveals Dermond's cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. He also says Dermond was dead before her body was dumped into the water. Investigators are now trying to find who may have killed Dermond and her husband, 88-year-old Russell Dermond. He was discovered 2 weeks ago by a neighbor in their Lake Oconee home, decapitated. Authorities continue to search the surrounding area and the lake for his head Saturday with no luck. With the discovery of Shirley's body in the lake, investigators are now speculating whomever did this came to their million-dollar home by boat. The news is a shock for the small community, especially their pastor, David Key, who says they were active community members.
The Dermonds were great people, very salt-of-the-earth kind of folks, very grounded. They weren't pretentious. They weren't showy. They were very popular.
He is in close contact with the Dermonds' 3 adult children. They left the county earlier this week. It's unknown when they'll return. But Key says finding their mother's body is a shock for the family, and it seems to have stunned everyone in Eatonton.
I just hope they get to the bottom of it, because this is a quiet community. People feel safe, and you know, so it's just a surprise to everyone.
Sheriff Howard Sills says investigators are nearly through processing the home. No leads yet on the case, but Sills said in yesterday's press conference that finding Shirley will help his team further the investigation. Sills has referred to the Dermonds as the all-American couple, making this case unusual for him to track a suspect.
On May 20th, 2014, the Department of Natural Resources said the Lake Oconee search was called off to find the head of Russell Dermond until more information as to where they need to look was acquired.
After a weekend of developments in the Putnam County double murder case, we've got still new information today. The Department of Natural Resources for the state of Georgia tells WGXA this afternoon that the Lake Oconee search for the head of Russell Dermond has been suspended for now until more information is available on just where they need to look. Captain Mark Padgett tells us that the Georgia DNR has been searching the lake since day one and will continue the search as soon as they're told to. The body of Dermond's wife, Shirley, was found in Lake Oconee late Friday afternoon by some fishermen. Russell Dermond was found dead in their Reynolds Plantation garage 2 weeks ago. There's still no word right now on if the discovery of Mrs. Dermond changed plans for the funeral for her husband. Investigators still have no leads in the case. WGXA is waiting for comment from Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills on today's decision to temporarily call off the search.
On May 21st, 2014, the Macon Telegraph reported a team of law enforcement officials tracked new leads generated from interviewing more than 215 people on Sunday, May 18th. Sheriff Sills set up a meeting on the Sunday evening to brief residents in the gated community about the status of the investigation and to dispel rumors that are complicating the case. After Sills answered questions for about 30 minutes, it was his turn to do the asking. With the help of the Georgia Sheriff's Office Association, Sills assembled 35 sheriff's investigators from multiple counties, including Lawrence, Jones, Jasper, Morgan, and Newton. Nearly 24 FBI investigators also joined Sills' staff to question neighbors about the Dermonds and events leading up to their death. They put together a 28-page questionnaire of everything law enforcement wanted to know about the retired couple's habits and to elicit any other clues that could lead to a suspect. In about 3 hours, the team was able to cover a lot of ground in a neighborhood of 599 parcels. Investigators were combing through responses and tracking down any leads and following up with other neighbors who were not at Sunday's meeting. On Thursday, May 22, 2014, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills gave an interview to The Telegraph and shared the latest details in the hunt for clues in the murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond. He told The Telegraph that the investigators were still looking for Russell Dermond's head and that he was open to the possibility his head was taken because the killer or killers shot him in the head and didn't want the bullet to be found. He said Shirley Dermond was found with her clothes on and was not sexually assaulted. He told The Telegraph he thinks the crime indicates more than one person being involved in their murders. He also told The Telegraph he thinks the killer was a particularly brutal savage and that the killer or killers may have wanted to conceal Shirley's body by dumping her in the lake. He said the killer or killers definitely did not use firearms on Shirley Dermond. He said he can't discuss too many details about the crime. But he said that the Dermonds had no enemies and lived in an inclusive neighborhood by a lake in a more secluded area. He didn't think the murders were random. He said the investigators have been focused on getting court records, real tangible information, real evidence, and are not driven by speculation. Sheriff Sills said he had narrowed the timeline of when they were murdered to a 24-hour window from between May the 2nd, Friday afternoon, and May 3rd, Saturday afternoon. On the 23rd of May 2014, WSB spoke to FBI Special Agent of the Atlanta Field Division, Britt Johnson, and he claimed he doesn't think it was a random crime and that FBI agents are helping the Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills with the investigation.
It is personal. There's a lot of indications of the psychology and the behavior behind that. It's not a random crime.
Britt Johnson, FBI Special Agent in charge for the Atlanta Field Division that covers all of Georgia, says he put agents in Putnam County to investigate what became the Dermond double murder at the request of Sheriff Howard Sills.
We will be there as long as we're needed.
But he says it's tailor-made for what the FBI can do. For one, add manpower to a big mystery in a small community.
How many people have you had involved?
It's around 40 people.
That ranges, he says, from agents to evidence experts, some involved a few hours, some for the duration thus far. He says the Bureau's brought the expertise of criminal profilers at its behavioral analysis unit.
Trying to establish a profile. But in addition, they can go back and look against a database nationwide.
He says from even tiny traces at the Great Water subdivision where the Dermonds live and elsewhere, the Bureau's crime lab can do great things.
If there's specific, ropes or materials that we could identify the origin of manufacture, potentially where they've been purchased.
And he says there's ultra-sophisticated high-tech stuff that he can't let the bad guys know about. Johnson says some legal limitations on what kind of help the FBI can provide kicked in after the discovery of Shirley Dermond's body in Lake Oconee meant the case was no longer a kidnapping investigation.
I think the good Lord has provided us with the recovery of her body.
But the Sheriff Sills' request for FBI assistance means the agents still have a lot of latitude.
When we have something that we could potentially solve that has very few leads, that's actually the one that I think inspires that fire in the belly the most.
On Tuesday, June 3rd, 2014, with word emerging of a $30,000 and rising reward being offered in the case, Sheriff Howard Sills, who has never used rewards to stir up suspects, said he was left with little choice. In an article released by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on Saturday, June 14, 2014, it claimed Sheriff Sills revealed a neighbor said that he saw a man in the Dermonds' yard on May 3rd, but the neighbor was not sure and could not tell whether it was Russell Dermond, and because of the shrubbery, they didn't get a good look at the man. In the same article, it reported earlier on in the week, investigators received their first break and were hopeful after they were told by a North Georgia woman that she had overheard a conversation about the Dermonds' murder, a plausible lead, but Sheriff Sills said it turned out to be nothing. The reward, now totaling just under $45,000, had yet to bring in any calls. Sheriff Sills said, although they are frustrated, they have hundreds of fingerprints and hair and tissue samples, but none of that evidence so far has led them any closer to naming a suspect. In early July 2014, it was reported in the Macon Telegraph that 2 months after the murders, the Dermonds' phone records were released to investigators. Sheriff Sills said there is a lot of people working on the case. Sills said they have eliminated several suspects early on and are focusing on pulling strings of newer information, such as the phone records, to see if they can help unravel the case. The reward, as of early July 2014, stood at $55,000. On Friday, the 8th of August 2014, the Atlanta Constitution released an article claiming cold case detectives were called in to help. In the report, it claimed that on the sheriff's desk on Wednesday the 6th, it had 4,000 plus pages of documents related to the Dermond couple's finances on it, and that in the week investigators had polygraphed someone who came forward with information that could prove fruitful. Sills recently had called on the expertise of 2 detectives from Jacksonville, Florida, Sheriff's Cold Case Squad. The Florida detectives spent a day and a half in Eatonton examining crime scene photographs and other materials.
We haven't had a homicide here in 10 years. So this is an area that's free from that kind of violence and that kind of crime, and so the whole area is that way. And then if you had to pick all the residents, the Dermonds would certainly be at the bottom of the list, or toward the bottom of the list of ones that someone would do some sort of revenge crime like this.
And it's still a huge mystery. Who killed a Georgia husband and wife that were married for 62 years? The husband, Russell Dermond, was beheaded. His wife, Shirley, found dead in the water right outside their lakefront home. Police in their quiet community are stumped and are getting help from police in Jacksonville, Florida, where the Dermonds used to live. HLN law enforcement analyst Mike Brooks. Mike, what is going on? What's the latest? And will the killers be brought to justice?
Well, Joey, I think it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. You know, this took place on May 5th, and it just shook the Great Waters community of Lake Oconee, where all this happened. Well, we want to bring you the latest. Joining me by phone right now is Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills. Sheriff, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for calling.
So, Sheriff, it's been since May 5th now, and I know there is a lot of forensic evidence. You've talked to a lot of witnesses. You've taken a lot of statements. What is the latest in this case?
Unfortunately, there are no new developments. We are just now getting, we are still getting records, bank records, telephone records. We've just gotten some crime lab reports back from the state crime lab. But at this point in time, we're still searching for a motive and obviously those who are responsible for doing this.
Now, Russell Dermond, most of his business dealings were down in the Jacksonville, Florida area. And I'm sure that's what you're looking at on a lot of business records. But you also brought in some investigators from Jacksonville to help you in this investigation. How did that help?
Well, let me say, first of all, Russell Dermond didn't have any business dealings in Jacksonville. He's been retired for over 20 years. His business was in the metro Atlanta area. He does have some adult sons in the Jacksonville area. I did personally request 2 detectives from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. They have a cold case squad. The Jacksonville, Florida Sheriff's Office is probably one of the largest police agencies in the Southeast. Mm-hmm. And the sheriff there and I went to the FBI Academy together, and I asked for a couple of his cold case detectives just to come up and go over they spent about a day and a half with us going over our evidence, just to get new eyes and eyes who specialized in a cold case. And they've gone over what we did, made some suggestions, but to a great extent simply concurred with with what we had done and the course we were undertaking still.
Now, there's reports that there were a number of polygraphs taken or given to some people that may have had some information and some people that came forward with some possible tips. I know polygraphs are a great investigative tool. Has that helped at all?
Well, it certainly early on we polygraphed people who worked for the Dermonds. That, along with some other corroboration, allowed us to eliminate those people from being suspects. And then we recently polygraphed an individual who brought forth some information. And I want to stress that I'm just some information. And that polygraph primarily was to determine if that person was.
In November 2014, 6 months after the bodies of Russell and Shirley Dermond were found, investigators still had few leads and no suspects. Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills told the media that, "The more I dig, the less I find." He said he planned to scrutinize the Dermonds' associates in Phoenix. Sheriff Howard Sills still believed there was more than one person involved and claimed that the culprits aren't local. In May 2015, on the first-year anniversary of the Dermonds' deaths, the Lake Oconee Community Church finally held a memorial service for them.
Lake Oconee Community Church finally held a memorial service for Russell and Shirley Dermond, the Putnam County couple who was murdered last year. Reverend David Keyes says it was postponed because of the ongoing investigation. Once church members realized it's possible the case could remain unsolved, they decided to hold the service on the one-year anniversary of their murder. Friends remembered Shirley's excellent bridge-playing skills and Russell's one-of-a-kind sense of humor.
The reality is we may have to live with this for the rest of our lives, just never having a true answer as to why this occurred to Russ and Shirley. And so trying to help people realize that that's just part of life.
As friends gathered in a storefront church to memorialize Russell and Shirley Dermond, a deputy with the Putnam County Sheriff's Department dutifully recorded the tag number of each of the cars parked outside. Sheriff Howard Sills told the Atlanta Constitution that he thinks the killer or killers got to the house by vehicle and that the investigators have identified a person of interest and cautioned that shouldn't be interpreted to mean a suspect. He said investigators have interviewed him twice. Sheriff Sills said he is convinced the person who killed the Dermonds knew them and that the killers, he believed, were driven by personal animus, perhaps their own or perhaps on behalf of someone else. Sills said he is discounting no lead, even those that strain credibility. He said some believe terrorists were responsible, or maybe a religious cult. At 3 a.m. on Wednesday, September 23, 2015, Putnam County deputies were called because a man was seen with a big knife slashing tires on nearly 24 cars in the exclusive Putnam County neighborhood where Russell and Shirley lived. When deputies got there, they chased the man, who was 34-year-old Ryan Oliver Glenn, after he tossed aside his knife, which had a 10-inch blade. One deputy later tackled Glenn on a golf course fairway. 34-year-old Russell Oliver Glenn, who had been in prison twice at the time since 2011 for battery and aggravated assault, among other crimes, was staying with his father on Beach Haven Lane, which is less than a mile from the Carolyn Drive home where unsolved murder victims Shirley and Russell Dermond lived. Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills said there appeared to be no connection with the Dermond murders at this time, but he is a man with a criminal background running around with a knife. Obviously, we're going to look into his background. Sills said this is really the first crime we've had in great waters since the Dermond murders. The unemployed Glenn has ties to Florida and the Atlanta area, which the Dermonds did as well. Sheriff Howard Sills was asked if he might be a suspect, and he replied that he doubts it. The sheriff did want to know where Glenn was around the time the Dermonds were murdered, whether Glenn perhaps was in jail or not, or living in metro Atlanta. Glenn had prior incidents with knives and is a knife guy, but he's a nut job, Sills said. Sills said his daddy says he's insane, but he has never been adjudicated as unfit to stand trial. Sills said Glenn led Putnam deputies on a high-speed car chase in 2005, but that was the only time Glenn had been jailed in Eatonton. Glenn blamed the episode on alcohol when he was taken into court for slashing the tires of some 20 automobiles. At 3 p.m. on November 9, 2015, 83-year-old socialite Lois Colley was found dead from blunt force trauma to the head in the laundry room of her own home, a farm in North Salem, New York. There was no sign of forced entry, and nothing was taken except for a small extinguisher. She was the wife of McDonald's franchise owner Eugene Colley, who was said to be worth at least $100 million. New York State Police reached out to Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills because of the possibility the murder of 83-year-old Lois Colley was connected to the Dermond murders, but Sheriff Howard Sills didn't believe they were. The November 2015 North Salem, New York murder of 83-year-old Lois Colley was later solved, and in November 2017, a 32-year-old day laborer who was an undocumented immigrant named Esdras Mariquin Gomez, known as Victor from Guatemala, who wasn't a regular worker but had done work at the Colley's North Salem windswept farm in New York, was charged with second-degree murder. On Thursday, June 13, 2019, 34-year-old Esdras Mariquin Gomez was sentenced to 22 years to life in prison for murdering millionaire 83-year-old socialite Lois Colley on her farm. Esdras Mariquin Gomez killed Lois Colley with a fire extinguisher, bludgeoning her to death. The motive was over a dispute he had with the Colleys over a 2013 accident where he badly cut his leg with a chainsaw on the Colley property. After recovering, he tried to return to work, but was told the Colleys did not want him anymore. On the day of the murder, his lawyer Cynthia Lobo said he went to the farm to speak to Eugene Colley, looking to be paid over the incident, not with the intention of killing the man's wife, but he went out of control on a hideous day. 2 years after the murders, on June 1, 2016, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills spoke to a WSB News reporter and told her that he knows the killer accessed their home by boat and that the Dermonds knew their killer on some level.
Developing today, a local sheriff says he is working with police departments in other states to help solve the murders of an elderly couple. The husband was beheaded. His wife's body was found later in Lake Oconee. Channel 2's Liz Arts reports from Putnam County. Their murders remain a mystery 2 years later.
He told us what baffles him the most is how differently the bodies were discovered. What he does know is that the killers accessed the couple's home by boat, entering the lake somewhere in the area.
It's still our #1 priority here.
Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills told me Wednesday not a day goes by he doesn't do something for the Shirley and Russell Dermond homicide case.
I hope I never let it get cold, Liz.
The longtime lawman said it's the only murder case that has baffled him.
Then we have Mr. Dermond's body found at home, minus its head. You can't get much more conspicuous than that. Yet the other person is concealed in 70 foot of water.
He thinks at least 2 people worked together to kill the couple in their 80s 2 years ago last month. He knows the killer accessed their home by boat, and he thinks they knew their killer on some level.
Yeah, I do. Because there's nothing disturbed in the house.
Sills has been in touch with investigators from New York to Texas to Nevada who have had such similar murders he thought there could be a connection, but no solid leads came from any of the cases. He told us he needs that person who knows something to come forward.
And we're not going to quit. Whoever did this is certainly capable of doing it again. Don't think they won't do it to you.
There is still a substantial reward being offered, more than $50,000. The tipster can remain anonymous.
In a question and answers on the news in the Atlanta Constitution newspaper released on Tuesday, the 25th of April, 2017, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills answered a question asking if there was any further developments on the murders of the couple who lived on Lake Oconee, and he replied that there have been few leads and that it is not something that is being actively pursued on a daily basis, but it is not something we've forgotten. Sheriff Howard Sills said it is still a priority of the Eatonton Police Department, and it is a priority in his life. In May 2018, 4 years after the Dermonds were murdered, their youngest son, Brad Dermond, gave an interview with 11 Alive to discuss his parents and said he still believes their murders will be solved. In May 2018, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills released surveillance footage of Russell Dermond in a Publix pharmacy near his home picking up a prescription from around 2:30 p.m. on Thursday, May 1st, 2014. On Tuesday, August 28, 2018, police arrived at a home at Jones Bluff Court in Reynolds Plantation at Lake Oconee after receiving a 911 call around 6:35 a.m. from 45-year-old Chad Lewis Hoffler, who said 2 or 3 people had invaded his home and that he had shot one of them. Chad Hoffler was later arrested on a murder charge after Greene County deputies found a deceased man in the home's basement who was 51-year-old Mark Demos of Minerva, Ohio. Chad Hoffler later claimed he killed Mr. Demos in self-defense and that Mr. Demos was a good friend of his who tried to choke him, changing his original story from that of 2 or 3 intruders had come into his home. The shooting was an isolated incident, according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. In June 2021, Chad Hoffler was convicted of murdering Mark Demos and was found guilty of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and possession of a firearm during a commission of a crime. Hoffler was then sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus 5 years. In May 2019, 5 years after the Dermonds were killed, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills spoke with the Telegraph and said every anniversary since the first one has troubled him, and the killings are the first thing he thinks about when he wakes up in the morning. He said the mystery is a yoke around his neck and that it's embarrassing for him that the case has not been solved and there was nothing new to report. He said leads have been plentiful, but none have panned out. In May 2019, 5 years after the murders, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills told the Atlanta Constitution newspaper that Russell Dermond was most likely shot due to the gun residue which was found on his collar, and the sheriff claimed that the head was removed because the killers knew the bullet could be traced. He said there were deep wounds on Shirley Dermond's head and she was felled by 2 or maybe 3 blows to the head with a blunt object. Sheriff Sills believed the Dermonds knew at least one of their killers because there was no sign of a struggle. The Dermonds' 3 children all passed polygraphs and nothing links them to the crimes, Sills told the newspaper. Sheriff Sills said another fact that puzzles him was that the home was sold about a year after they were killed. In May 2021, the Macon Telegraph reported that there was a new lead that emerged in the 2014 Lake Oconee cold case killings. Sheriff Sills did not reveal to the Macon Telegraph what clue he may have, but that the material was something he was actively working on. He said a few weeks back, a tip from a college professor in another state seemed plausible until he ran it down. The professor claimed that a psycho love interest she had met online was responsible for killing the Dermonds. The woman sent him hundreds of pages of notes supporting her claim. Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills revealed to the Union Recorder in May 2021 that real estate developer turned serial killer Todd Kohlhepp, who confessed to killing 7 people in South Carolina between 2003 and 2016, was a tip, and Sheriff Sills said he talked to law enforcement officials in South Carolina, and there was nothing they could come up with which could link Todd Kohlhepp to the Georgia and Lake Oconee area at the time of their deaths. The sheriff said within the first week of receiving the citizen tip about the possibility of Kohlhepp's involvement in the murders, he scoured cell phone information. Sills said the VICAP program used by the FBI was being used to help the investigation. Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills also told the Union Recorder that a lead from Galveston, Texas, where a man was decapitated and his head was taken with the killer, was another lead which didn't pan out. The lead which didn't pan out was from the decapitation murder which occurred on May 3, 2016 of 24-year-old pipe fitter Jubal D. Alexander from Longview, Texas. Jubal Alexander was living under a bridge in Angleton, Texas in a pickup truck by a boat ramp to save money and worked at a chemical plant a close distance to the bridge. He was not homeless but did not want to use hotels to save money and lived in Beaumont, Texas with his family, 2 hours away from the chemical plant he worked at. Jubal's body was found May 3, 2016 after a fisherman, who was also a police officer from Galveston, Texas, noticed that his Chevrolet pickup hadn't moved all day from the Austin Bayou boat ramp where he was fishing. Jubal was found decapitated. His head was missing. Jubal Alexander's killer was eventually brought to justice. His killer was 24-year-old Zachary Lynn Foyt from Angleton, Texas. Zachary Foyt fled to Lakewood, Colorado after the murder, and police arrested him in Colorado in late May 2016 after being tipped off by a witness who came forward on May 24, 2016 and told investigators that Zachary Foyt was involved with Jubal Alexander's death. Prosecutors alleged at Zachary Foyt's trial in January 2018 that he fatally shot a sleeping Alexander on April 26, 2016 with a 9mm Smith & Wesson. Phone records indicated that he and a friend, 54-year-old Monroe Sparky Stafford, who was later charged with tampering with evidence, returned days later to decapitate Alexander's body and retrieved the bullet Foyt thought was still embedded in the man's skull. The lack of bleeding indicated Alexander had been decapitated after he died. A forensic anthropologist said that Jubal Alexander's head likely was severed from his cervical vertebrae with a thin, sharp object, such as a scalpel. Jubal Alexander stopped responding to text messages from his girlfriend Rhea Honda Allen on the morning of April 27, 2016. Jubal Alexander's head was never found. 26-year-old Zachary Lynn Hoyt was sentenced on January 26, 2018 to life in prison with the possibility for parole for the first-degree murder charge and fined $10,000. In June 2021, 33-year-old Christopher Colin Demon was arrested and charged with a count of malice murder after 29-year-old Justin Yeng Xiong's severed body was discovered behind a house in Devereux, Georgia. Demon killed him and dismembered his body before wrapping the body parts in a plastic bag that was left in the shed. He shot his roommate Justin Yeng Xiong to death and used a chainsaw to dismember his body. Demon was released from a Florida prison 7 months before he was charged with the murder in Georgia. In June 2021, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills told the Union Recorder that Demon was a suspect in a theft from a resident in Putnam County. Sills said, "Obviously, any time there is a report of some sort of a dismemberment of a body, I get interested." In October 2022, Christopher Colin Demon was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole for the murder of Justin Yeng Xiong. 8 years after the Dermonds were killed, in May 2022, it was revealed new evidence had been acquired from the FBI, which was cell phone data. Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills told WSB writer and reporter Justin Wilfin that he is cautiously optimistic. Sheriff Howard Sills also revealed information to the news media that someone had took a lamp from the home and put it on the trunk lid of one of the cars in the garage, and the shade was taken off it.
We learned tonight there is new evidence in the murder of a couple in their 80s. Tomorrow marks 8 years since Russell and Shirley Dermond were killed in Putnam County. The story got national attention after learning the husband was beheaded and the wife's body was dropped in a lake. Channel 2's Justin Wilfon is live outside the FBI building in DeKalb County for us. And Justin, new evidence from the FBI is really giving investigators new hope here.
Yeah, the Putnam County Sheriff told me tonight, Wendy, that here at the FBI, they're helping him now with some cell phone evidence that he's kind of hopeful might finally help him solve this horrific case.
I got some data just last week.
Potential new evidence in the killings of Shirley and Russell Dermond at their home on Lake Oconee. 8 years later, the infamous unsolved case haunts Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills.
I'm not making excuses for the work I've done. I know damn well that I'm the man responsible for this, and it weighs heavy on me.
But now he told me he's cautiously optimistic about the new evidence in the case, cell phone data provided by the FBI.
Searching through that to see if we may be able to find some clue as to who was in the area at the time. This is technology that was not available 8 years ago.
Shirley and Russell Dermond were killed in May of 2014. 88-year-old Russell was found beheaded in the couple's garage. The body of 87-year-old Shirley was found in Lake Oconee, tied to concrete blocks.
Still tough as day one. It's very raw.
For the first time, we talked with the Dermond son, Brad. He told me that even 8 years later, the family remains optimistic the case will get solved.
We feel like there's a very strong likelihood that it was done by more than one person. And then anytime you have that, then there's a greater chance for that information to leak.
The Dermonds were people of deep faith.
They were at church the Sunday before they were murdered, and so knew them quite well. Lovely couple.
Their pastor told me he's keeping the faith too, that someday police will solve the tragedy that still lingers over this beautiful community.
I still have folks that are saying, have they solved that mystery? Have they solved that mystery? And the reality is, no, we haven't. It's still an open case.
Channel 2's Justin Wilfon joining us back out live again. And Justin, you told us about that new evidence, but how about any other new leads in this case?
Yeah, unfortunately, Wendy, the sheriff telling me tonight that the leads in this case have really slowed down. Very few coming in right now. He did receive one just yesterday that he's now looking into. But certainly, if you have any information in this case, please call the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. Wendy?
Of course, this case still very alive in a lot of people's minds. Justin, thank you for that update.
In May 2023, it was revealed Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills had submitted evidence to a DNA lab operation called Othram, which had found some new DNA. Sills said he was hopeful the new DNA would lead to breaks in the case, though he wasn't sure if there's enough to run the DNA through a national database in search of a match with a suspect. Sills said they have some potential DNA that may or may not be identifiable, and it could still be the Dermonds. Sheriff Sills also said he had received the long-awaited results of geofencing, a means of identifying certain mobile devices that were active during a certain time period in a specific area. In this case, a period of time around when authorities believe the murders occurred, and an area of several acres, including the Dermond home.
Channel 2 investigative reporter Mark Winnie learned today newly discovered DNA evidence could change that. Mark's live right now at FBI headquarters in Atlanta.
A number of developments. The FBI Atlanta field office says Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills has been consulting with the FBI about the murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond in 2014, and the FBI confirms some of the new evidence Sheriff Sills told us about may be going to the FBI crime lab in Quantico, Virginia, but maybe the biggest thing is what the sheriff told us about DNA.
Is this the most significant development in the case in years?
Yes. If it pans out.
Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills confirms the new discovery of DNA on evidence from the May 2014 murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond, a mystery deeper than Lake Oconee itself. The lake where Shirley Dermond's body was discovered after someone apparently tried to weight it down, the lake by which the Dermonds' opulent home sat. The sheriff says Shirley Dermond died by blunt force trauma. He says Russell Dermond was decapitated after his death, and Sills suspects he had been shot.
Was this DNA on items of particular evidentiary interest?
Yes.
That's why this is potentially significant.
Yes.
Sheriff Sills says in 2 trips, early December and late February, he took evidence to a DNA lab operation called Othram, which made the new discovery. My colleague Karen Greer, who's been working the story with me, obtained video from Othram. Sills says Okmulgee Circuit District Attorney Wright Barksdale visited the lab with him in February.
We continue to try new things. We have something, whether that's going to evolve into something else, I don't know. At this point in time, there has to be some more analysis done.
D.A. Barksdale indicated by phone he's been made aware by Sheriff Sills that he has obtained new evidence in the case, both through technology and science, that authorities are excited about and hopeful will lead to breaks in the case. He said, quote, "But we've got to remain cautious and remain patient," unquote. But also, he said, working hard every day to solve it. Sills says while the new DNA could potentially provide the break for which he's been searching the better part of a decade, it's far from a sure thing. That he doesn't know, for instance, whether there's enough DNA to run through a national DNA database in search of a match with a suspect.
There has to be an additional test done to what's been developed so far, and whether or not that is potentially enough to run it through CODIS.
Or even if the DNA belongs to the killer.
We have some potential DNA that may or may not be identifiable. And it still could be the Dermond's DNA.
The sheriff says he has also now received the long-awaited results of geofencing, a means of identifying certain mobile devices that were active during a certain time period in a specific area. In this case, a period of time around when authorities believe the murders occurred, and an area of several acres, including the Dermond home.
Are you working your way through those names?
I have them. There's nobody there with any kind of alarming criminal history, and there's nobody there, at least at this juncture, that I know has any connection, but I can find a connection to the Dermonds. I know that much about them. Now, if their DNA showed up, that would be different.
Now, Sheriff Sills says, bottom line, the discovery this DNA is potentially huge, but it depends on a lot of variables, including whether there is enough to do a comparison with a national database that might lead to a suspect, or whether it can lead to useful genomic comparison. He says he's got boxes of leads that did not pan out, but he is trying to stay optimistic.
On May 6, 2024, 10 years after Russell Dermond was discovered murdered, FBI Atlanta Special Agent Andy Smith talked about the case to 11 Alive and brought up the cell phone information and the new DNA information Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills found out in mid-April 2024, which was DNA found on Russell Dermond's shirt, which did not match Russell or Shirley Dermond.
Tonight, there is new movement in one of the most brutal unsolved killings in Georgia. Tomorrow will mark 10 years since Russell and Shirley Dermond, both in their late 80s, were killed. Authorities say Russell was decapitated while Shirley's body was tied to cinder blocks later found in Lake Oconee in Putnam County. It's a cold case now heating up with a possible break involving DNA. Tonight, 11 Alive's Cody Alcorn spoke with the Putnam County Sheriff and the FBI agent who's been working the Dermond case about how this new evidence could lead investigators straight to the killers.
Thursday, May 1st, 2014. The last time 88-year-old Russell Dermond was seen alive, captured on camera inside a local Publix. The last day he and his wife, 87-year-old Shirley Dermond, were ever heard from again.
Putnam County 911. Yes, I have an emergency. Okay, I think I have somebody dead.
On May 6th, Russell's decapitated body was found in the couple's garage. Shirley missing. Special Agent Andy Smith with the FBI.
I have never seen a case like this in my time as an FBI agent.
10 days after Russell's headless body was found, fishermen found Shirley's body miles away from their lakefront home.
The body was weighted, and obviously it was not intended for her to be found.
A mistake by the killers.
I do believe it was more than one person was involved.
Likely people the Dermonds knew.
The lack of evidence of theft makes it seem more of a personal crime.
Who may soon be identified through advancements in technology.
Whether it's the DNA evidence that we're evaluating or cellular data that we're evaluating.
S.A. Smith makes it clear.
We never stop trying to find who committed this murder.
The most promising lead in nearly a decade, DNA found on Russell's shirt. A private lab confirms does not belong to the Dermonds, which Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills just learned about last week.
It's probably going to be whoever perpetrated these murders, or at least somebody who was a party to the crime.
A crime with many unanswered questions only investigators and the Dermonds' killers can answer.
We're not ready to put out all the details that we have about what happened that night.
But a decade later, they're ready to put the killers on notice.
We do have leads that we are looking for you, and that we're not going to stop until we get you.
S.A. Smith says between the DNA evidence and the cell phone data being evaluated, technology is going to solve this case. Now, as for the DNA, he says there is still more testing to be done before they can enter that into a national database, and also confirms they have evidence being examined at their labs in Quantico. There is a $25,000 reward being offered in this case.
10 years have passed since Russell and Shirley Dermond were murdered in May 2014, and hopefully the promising new developments in the case will help bring their killer or killers to justice sooner rather than later.